the etiquette, unlike a bar, when you walk into a snack, the etiquette is you ask if it's okay to come in because it it pays respect to the mama-san or the master kind of choosing the customers. So you basically appear in the doorway and ask, is it okay to come in?
So you've had a long and fruitful career in these areas of, like you said, photojournalism and documentarian, as you know, a freelance photographer. What would be some key takeaways? And I really like this question because when I was doing my research for the article, it's just like, what do you tell now? Like, what do you advise for this up and coming generation?
What I can tell you is that as long as you're in it for the long term,
Mhm.
you'll find a way. That's the only thing is that you can't expect recognition or success. You know, it has to be what you want to do. If you think about it as a job, I would advise you not to go there.
Note of desire and passion for the love of photography. You have some recent photographic books, which include your new book and Greg Girard Photographs 1972 to 2026. I've got to look at that book because I didn't get a chance to while I was at the gallery. Snack Sakura, which you released in 2025. Is that correct? Am I correct in assuming that? 2025?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And a recently released publication, JAL 76 to 88, that discusses Japan during its pre-bubble era. Can you tell us a little bit about these and what we can glean from all these photo essays?
Um,
Mhm.
so in the 70s, it was before Blade Runner. So this notion of Tokyo as a modern, hypermodern, near future city generally wasn't known unless you lived there or had visited. And Time magazine hadn't published stories about modern Japan yet. So modern Tokyo was kind of a hidden thing. And somebody who had been there described it to me. And so I thought, well, on my next visit to that part of the world, I'm going to stop and have a look. And so I had a one-way ticket to Bangkok, stopping in Tokyo and other places, and got off the plane and stowed my baggage at the airport, and took the train to the city, and was just kind of blown away by this modern, hyper-modern city that was nothing like I'd been prepared for, really. And so I walked around Shinjuku, this very lively part of the city, all night. And then by morning decided that I'm going to stay. And so I ended up finding a job at the world's first English school. And I was 20 years old, had no business to be teaching anything, but got hired as a teacher and was suddenly after a week living in Tokyo, and just set about photographing the place. Again, this is before I have any understanding of what it means to document anything, but I don't
Mhm.
think you need to know anything at all to make photographs. You just wade into a place and start making pictures of people, of the streets, of everything and anything. And so that's what I did. I ended up living in Tokyo during that period for about 3 years or so. And then from my days in Hong Kong, started getting assignments to work in Japan on assignment. So suddenly I'm staying in good hotels and at another kind of level of engagement. But most of those pictures in the gel book are mostly from the late 70s and early 80s, a little bit later on. But the gel part of the title stands for Japan Airlines, of course. It was a kind of an aspect airline for me back in the day. I'd been traveling on budget Asian carriers in those days. That meant China Airlines or Korean Airlines or Air Siam, those kind of carriers. And Japan Airlines was a kind of a premium carrier that I'd never traveled on. So, and the airline posters of the day are a kind of a signature of the travel landscape of idealized versions of destination cities. And so I kind of wanted to refer to all that when I figured out a title for the pictures and for the book.
Oh, I love that. That's so, yeah, it's quite layered. It really resonated again with that idea of using certain films too, because you were using film back then. Like it's not like you were using digital. So obviously, you know, and it was just incredible. So how brilliant it was. The other thing, and I just want to note this. So when I went to the gallery, a lot of photography groups were going through. And it is one of those, you're showing right now is one of those ones, it's a destination gallery showing for a lot of, film photographers, because I guess they're just gleaning so much from it.
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really surprised by it. It was one of the staff members that had mentioned it, and she told me, she says, "Yeah, they're they're coming through all the time." So I thought that was quite fascinating as well. So just a little bit, maybe just quickly before we get off the topic, though, could you tell me just a little bit about that more recent or last year's, sorry, publication of Snack Sakura. So what's that about too? Just out of curiosity.
So a snack is a category of drinking place in Japan that was basically invented just before the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. The authorities were concerned of the influx of foreigners arriving in Tokyo and being swept up by a salacious Japanese nightlife, I guess. A new law requiring bars and clubs to close at midnight. And to get around this new rule, some of the bar owners decided that they could skirt the new law by creating a new category of drinking place that was serving not exactly meals, but maybe things to eat. And so they dreamed up this new category of drinking place called a snack. It's a borrowed word from English. I mean, it actually doesn't mean snack. I mean, for their purposes, it means bar, but it just sounds less bar-like. And so they were able to get around this new law and could stay open later. But what happened is that in the beginning, it was a fashionable new kind of drinking place, but quickly over time, it became a place for middle-aged or older folks to have a drink, and young people moved on to discos and nightclubs and live music and the rest of it. So this category of drinking place and snack kind of became more like a place for salarymen to stop for a drink on the way home or to take a client. They're very basic in in what they could be, simply a counter and a few stools, maybe a booth. In some places, they're a little bit more hostess club-like, but the basic features of a snack are somebody behind the counter who owns the place, a mama-san or a master, and a regular clientele who maybe keeps a bottle of their choice of alcohol behind the counter, and a karaoke machine. And that's really it. There's not much to them. But the etiquette, unlike a bar, when you walk into a snack, the etiquette is you ask if it's okay to come in because it pays respect to the mama-san or the master kind of choosing the customers. So you basically appear in the doorway and ask, is it okay to come in? And of course it's okay. They direct you to the counter or whatever and you sit down. But, in a bar, you don't ask. You just walk in and sit down and you kind of, if you want to talk to somebody, you do. If you don't, you don't. In a snack, it's a little bit more social where you'll be asked, what you like to drink and might be engaged in conversation. So it's a bit more of a social environment. In any case, these places, by the time I was living in Japan, were the most unfashionable places to have a drink. I don't think I went there except by accident when I was living in Japan in the late 70s. And later, maybe 10 years ago, I was photographing on another project, and I start noticing in these small towns I'm visiting that each place seems to have a place called Snack Sakura. Sakura is cherry blossom. And it's a chain thing or anything like that. But in Canada, it might be something like Maple Leaf Pub, like basically the most boring name you could choose for something. And these places, I discovered every town seemed to have a place called Snack Sakura. And so I contacted the All Japan Snack Owners Association and asked about what's the name of your of your members, what's the biggest category of name? And they came back and said Snack Sakura. And so I was right in my suspicions. And so I started going from town to town across Japan looking for places called Snack Sakura in every town from Okinawa to Hokkaido. And so that took about 6 years to wander through Japan and get enough pictures to do something marginally thorough across Japan's 47 prefectures. I ended up photographing, I think, about 30 prefectures. So it's volume 1 of the project has been published, and eventually we go on to volume 2.
And you've talked a little bit about it, but what do you see yourself kind of doing as it relates to your photography in the next couple of years?
No, I like making books, so that's what I'll continue doing. If something's already been done, it's unlikely I'll pay attention to it, and so I kind of want to do these things that we could call it hidden in plain sight, maybe, or overlooked, or just a strand that you pull on that kind of reveals something underneath. So I like those kind of things that are revealed over time. And that's kind of been how I've done things, as you've noted, whether it was downtown Vancouver or wherever. I guess selfishly, I like to feel like I have something in terms of subject matter all to myself, and so, and these projects can take years. So I tend to talk about them before I do them because it takes so long to do them. But I'm always working on something, and I'll continue making books, and both likely in Asia, Japan perhaps, and this part of the world as well.